Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast, the weekly Torah portion podcast where I read the weekly Torah portion, then provide my own interpretation of what I think it all means. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Shoftim, following on the 4th of Elul 5784, September 7th, 2024. It covers Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 18 through 21, verse 9. For those wanting to follow along in English, you can do so via Chabad.org. We'll be jumping right in with the first portion. As always, I remind everybody I am not a professional Torah scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the Torah. Let's begin. Chapter 16, verse 18 of Deuteronomy, Devarim, Parashat Shoftim. First portion. You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself in all your cities that the Lord your God is giving you, for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not plant for yourself an Asherah or any tree near the altar of the Lord your God, which you shall make for yourself, and you shall not set up for yourself a monument which the Lord your God hates. Chapter 17, verse 1. You shall not sacrifice to the Lord your God an ox or a sheep that has in it a blemish or any bad thing, for that is an abomination to the Lord your God. If there will be found among you within one of your cities which the Lord your God is giving you, a man or woman who does evil in the eyes of the Lord your God to transgress his covenant, and who will go and worship other gods and prostrate himself before them, or to the sun, the moon, or any of the host of the heavens, which I have not commanded, and it will be told to you, and you will hear it and investigate thoroughly, and behold, the matter coincides. This abomination has been perpetrated in Israel. Then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has committed this evil thing to your cities, the man or the woman, and you shall pelt them with stones, and they shall die. By the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall the one liable to death be put to death. He shall not be put to death by the mouth of 1 witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be the first upon to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people, and you shall abolish evil from among you. If a matter eludes you in judgment, between blood and blood, between judgment and judgment, or between legion and legion, words of dispute in your cities, then you shall rise up and go up to the place the Lord your God chooses. And you shall come back to the Levitic Kohanim, and to the judge who will be in those days. And you shall inquire, and they will tell you the words of judgment. And you shall do according to the word they tell you, from the place the Lord will choose, and you shall observe to do according to all they instruct you. According to the law they instruct you, and according to the judgment they say to you, you shall do. You shall not divert from the word they tell you, either right or left. And the man who acts intentionally, not obeying the Kohen, who stands there to serve the Lord your God, or to the judge, that man shall die, and you shall abolish evil from Israel. And all the people shall listen and fear, and they shall no longer act wantonly. All right, that's the end of the first portion. So quickly breaking it down, first up, this is Shoftim, and it means judges, which I may have neglected to mention in the beginning of this episode. So Shoftim means judges, and it's all about setting up and appointing judges and law enforcement officials inside of the holy cities, or just inside the cities of Israel. So all throughout, they're going to have judges who do things righteously. They don't take bribes, they don't show favoritism, they don't pervert justice, they follow the law exactly as the Lord commands it. And you shall pursue justice. That is going to be one of the ways that you fulfill God's covenant and you honor him. Don't plant an Asherah or any tree, right? So again, we talked about this before, these Asherim, right? These trees toward a goddess of some kind, which are commanded to be destroyed as they go through the land. So basically, don't have any sort of pagan tree or a monument of some kind that is not commanded to you, because those are forbidden. Now, moving into chapter 17, if you make a sacrifice to God, it has to be of a perfect animal. It cannot be blemished or have any problems with it. And then also it goes into saying, if you find that there is a person committing blasphemy who's doing bad things and worships other gods, bowing to other gods, and we have 2 or 3 witnesses, so it can't just be 1 witness. If you have 2+ people saying, this happened, we saw it, that person will be put to death by stoning, and the first ones to cast the stones will be those who claim that they saw them do it. So the witnesses will be the first to do so. With that said, 1 witness is not enough to put someone to death, so there you have it. Now, if it comes to pass that there is a dispute between people, right, one person doesn't agree with another person, and they just can't quite make, for whatever reason, he says, you owe me money. He says, no, I don't owe you money. He's like, yes, you do. Well, this is my arrangement. We had an agreement. And you just can't come to an agreement, right? You're arguing. You can't agree. What is the right thing to do? Well, if you two can't solve it on your own, or if a group of people cannot solve whatever that problem is, whether it's blood or judgment or whatever, take it to the courts. So you will go and take it to the Levitic Kohanim and to the judge who will be in those days, right? So whoever is your authority making these judgments, they will give you the verdict, and you have to honor it no matter what. And after they've received the verdict, if that person, you tell them the judgment and they say, well, okay, well, I don't agree with that, I'm still not going to do it. At that point, now they have transgressed to an extent that they will be killed, because that man shall die for acting intentionally, not obeying the Kohen who stands there to serve the Lord, right? So in other words, these people, these judges, are there to do exactly what I just said. They're there to make the ruling. And if you say, well, I don't care what your ruling is, I'm going my own way, well, now you're insulting God as well as the judges, so you're put to death for that. And when people see this, and you see that you're abolishing all evil, everybody else is going to learn their lesson from it, and they're not going to commit sins because they know, okay, there are high consequences for doing these sorts of things. Now moving on to the second portion, chapter 17, verse 14 of Shoftim in Deuteronomy. When you come to the land the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and live therein, and you say, I will set a king over myself like all the nations around me, you shall set a king over you, one whom the Lord your God chooses, from among your brothers, and you shall set a king over yourself. You shall not appoint a foreigner over yourself, one who is not your brother. Only he may not acquire many horses for himself, so that he will not bring the people back to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. For the Lord said to you, you shall not return that way any more. And he shall not take many wives for himself, and his heart must not turn away, and he shall not acquire much silver and gold for himself. And it will be, when he sits upon his royal throne, that he shall write for himself 2 copies of this Torah on a scroll from that Torah which is before the Levitic Kohanim. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, to keep all the words of this Torah and these statutes to perform them, so that his heart will not be haughty over his brothers, and so that he will not turn away from the commandment, either to the right or to the left, in order that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his sons among Israel. Alrighty, so that's the end of the second portion. So this is now about appointing a king. So it basically says when it comes to the point of time where you've settled in and now you're saying we want to have a king, you have to make sure it's somebody that you appoint from within the people of Israel. So it can't be a foreigner. Your king has to be one of you. Now, another thing is, when he is the king, he's going to not be allowed to have too many horses, he's not going to be going out of his way to get many wives, and he's not going to have too much wealth either, right? These things will corrupt him is really what it's all about. And the horses, it says, well, he'll go to Egypt to get more horses, right? So no, don't do these things. Basically, if you're going to be king, your job is going to be one of modesty. Right? You cannot deviate. And in fact, not only this, but once he becomes the king, he's going to have to write 2 Torahs by hand himself and live by them. And they're going to be copied from the official Torah hosted or held by the Cohens. So this is the real deal. This job of kingship is not all fun and games at all. You're king, but that means you have to do a lot of responsibilities. And of course, remember to honor the Torah at all times. So as long as he does so, he will not only be a good king, but he's going to keep him and his family in power, essentially. So, fairly straightforward, but it is here a commandment that there shall be a king. On to the third portion, chapter 18, verse 1. The Levitic Kohanim, the entire tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. The Lord's fire offerings and inheritance they shall eat. But he shall have no inheritance among his brothers. The Lord is his inheritance, as he spoke to him. And this shall be the Kohanim's due from the people, from those who perform a slaughter, be it an ox or a sheep. He shall give the Kohen the foreleg, the jaws, and the maw. The first of your grain, your wine, and your oil, and the first of that fleece of your sheep you shall give him. For the Lord your God has chosen him out of all of your tribes, to stand and serve in the name of the Lord, he and his sons all the days. End of the third portion. Very quick. So this is just once again emphasizing that the Levites do not have the same portion being given to them as everybody else. Theirs is the Lord's portion. So they will receive from the offerings made to God. From that they shall have their food. Their inheritance? No, their inheritance is the Lord. It's their holy position. And it says here, from those who, this will be the Kohanim's due. From those who perform a slaughter, ox or sheep, he'll be given a foreleg, jaws, and the maw. And then first of your grain, wine, and oil, first fleece of the sheep, etc. So When these tributes are made to the Lord, a percentage of them, once again, is given to the Levites as their inheritance for maintaining all of these different edicts. Now moving on to the fourth portion, Devarim chapter 18, verse 6. And if a Levite comes from one of your cities out of all Israel where he sojourns, he may come whenever his soul desires to the place the Lord will choose, and he may serve in the name of the Lord his God, just like all his Levite brothers who stand there before God. They shall eat equal portions, except what was sold by the forefathers. When you have come to the land the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to do like the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who passes his son or daughter through fire, a soothsayer, a diviner of auspicious times, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, a pitom sorcerer, a yidoah sorcerer, or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations the Lord your God is driving them out from before you. Be wholehearted with the Lord your God. Fourth portion, also very brief. So this one here says if a Levite comes out from one of the cities, and he can go wherever he basically wants to go. So he's got freedom of movement, and to where he goes is where the Lord will tell him to go. So he may come wherever his soul desires to the place the Lord will choose, right? So he has the freedom to move between the different cities. And he may serve in the name of the Lord his God, just like his brother. So basically, he's basically saying that, yes, if you want to get a job transfer to a new city, no problem. And of course, he's going to get an equal portion, just like the rest. And it says here, except what was sold by the forefathers. So I'm not entirely sure, right? Equal portions except what was sold by the forefathers. I'm not 100% sure what that is referring to, unless it's talking about particular offerings that were made by the forefathers, so they can't have that portion. That is set aside, but again, I don't know the specifics. Now on here, it's also a reminder, do not learn the bad habits like the different kinds of sorcery, augury, soothsaying, child sacrifice, and more. Necromancy, not allowed. So all these different things and more are not permitted, and it's for these reasons that people that are currently there are being driven out. So don't do what they did or else I'm going to drive you out too. That's basically God's warning. That concludes the fourth portion, leading into the fifth, with one last statement: be wholehearted with the Lord your God. In other words, no half steps. Don't do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Be committed. Now on to the fifth portion, chapter 18, verse 14. For these nations which you are to possess hearken to diviners of auspicious times and soothsayers. But as for you, the Lord your God has not given you things like these. A prophet from among you, from your brothers like me, the Lord your God will set up for you. You shall hearken to him. According to all that you asked of the Lord your God in Horeb on the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not continue to hear the voice of the Lord my God, and let me no longer see this great fire, so that I will not die. And the Lord said to me, They have done well in what they have spoken. I will set up a prophet for them among their brothers, like you, and I will put my words into his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I command him. And it will be that whoever does not hearken to my words that he speaks in my name, I will exact it of him. But the prophet who intentionally speaks a word in my name, which I did not command him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. Now if you say to yourself, How will we know the word that the Lord did not speak? If the prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, and the thing does not occur and does not come about, that is the thing the Lord did not speak. The prophet has spoken it wantonly. You shall not be afraid of him. Chapter 19, verse 1. When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you inherit them, and dwell in their cities and in their houses, you shall separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess. Prepare the road for yourself, and divide into 3 parts the boundary of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and it will be for every killer to flee there. And this is the case of the killer who will flee there, so that he may live. Whoever strikes his fellow to death unintentionally, whom he did not hate in times past. And when a man goes with his fellow into the forest to chop wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron flies off the handle, and reaches his fellow, and he dies, he shall flee to one of these cities and live, lest the avenger of blood pursue the killer while his heart is hot, and overtake him, because the way is long, and he strikes him to death, whereas he was not deserving of death, for he had not hated him in the past. Therefore, I command you, saying, You shall separate for yourself 3 cities. And when the Lord your God expands your boundary, as he swore to your forefathers, and he gives you all the land of which he spoke to your forefathers, If you will keep all his commandments to perform it, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in his ways all the days, you shall add 3 more cities to yourself, in addition to these 3. So that innocent blood will not be shed in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God gives you, for an inheritance which would deem you guilty of having shed this blood. But if a man hates his fellow, lies in wait for him, rises up against him, and strikes him mortally, and he flees to one of these cities, the elders of his city shall send and take him from there, and deliver him into the hand of the avenger of the blood, that he may die. And you shall not pity him, but you shall abolish the shedding of the blood of the innocent from Israel, and it will be good for you. Thus concludes the 5th portion. So once again, to summarize or recap, we're taking a look now at 2 different chapters. So the first is talking about when you are going in among these nations, right? They have these soothsayers and they have these prophets or these people who read omens. We're not going to do it like that because God did not give you those different sorts of approaches. Instead, what's going to happen is God will appoint a prophet from among the people. That person will receive commandments or orders from God. And you're going to know that they're the real guy because everything he says will come true. So in the case of them saying something, this is also the test here is, how do we know this is really an actual prophet or not? So you're going to let him make his claims, then it's going to happen, and then from there, he's going to keep on receiving blessings or commandments or whatever, and they're going to keep happening, and that's how you know he's telling the truth. So this is important. So keep in mind, one of the people among the Bnei Israel will receive the commands or the words from God, and he will fulfill them, share them. The people will do as said once they know he is really the guy. And if he's a liar, don't be afraid of him. And insofar, it says here, a prophet who intentionally speaks a word in my name which I did not command him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. So there you have it. If the guy is proven to be a liar, if it's proven false, kill him. So pretty straightforward. Now, putting that aside, chapter 19, this covers what to happen when it's building more of these sanctuary cities. So remember, some of these cities were already built in the lands on the other side of the Jordan, but these are going to be additional sanctuary cities where people who kill someone accidentally, right? So this is not murder, this is manslaughter by temporary definitions. A guy who kills somebody accidentally, it would be understandable if the relatives would get revenge. So this city exists for those guys to run away to and be safe so that they don't get killed because of the revenge when it was an accident. Now, if it's not an accident and the guy was actually a murderer intending to kill the guy, it was premeditated, right? And he goes to one of these cities, well, instead of being protected, they're actually going to send him directly to the guy who's going to get revenge. So keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that the number of these cities will increase over time. So make sure that these are there. And it says, you're going to get 3 and then add 3 more cities as well. So that way you'll prevent innocent blood in the case of the people who were manslaughter, not murderer. They will be able to survive. But again, now we know the rules. So we're not going to let the people who are actually committing murder intentionally live. But those who do it on accident, listen, accidents happen. There's a condition for them to be able to survive, even though their relatives of the victim would be entitled to committing a revenge killing. On to the 6th portion, chapter 19, verse 14 of Devarim. You shall not pull back your neighbor's landmark, which the earlier ones have set as borders in your inheritance, which you will inherit in the land that the Lord your God gives you to possess. One witness shall not rise up against any person for any iniquity or for any sin, regarding any sin that he will sin. By the mouth of 2 witnesses or by the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be confirmed. If a false witness rises up against a man to bear perverted testimony against him, then the 2 men between whom the controversy exists shall stand before the Lord, before the Kohanim and the judges who will be in those days. And the judges shall inquire thoroughly. And behold, the witness is a false witness. He has testified falsely against his brother. Then you shall do to him as he plotted to do to his brother. And you shall thus abolish evil from among you. And those who remain shall listen and fear, and they shall no longer continue to commit any such evil thing among you. You shall not have pity, for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Chapter 20, verse 1. When you go out to war against your enemies, and you see horse and chariot, a people more numerous than you, you shall not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And it will be, when you approach the battle, that the Kohen shall come near and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are approaching the battle against your enemies. Let your hearts not be faint, you shall not be afraid, and you shall not be alarmed, and you shall not be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. And the officers shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and has not yet inaugurated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war and another man inaugurate it. And what man is there who has planted a vineyard, and has not yet redeemed it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and another man redeem it. And what man is there who has betrothed a woman, and has not yet taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and another man take her. And the officers shall continue to speak to the people, and say, What man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, that he should not cause the heart of his brothers to melt as his heart. And it shall be that when the officials finish speaking to the people, they shall appoint officers of the legions at the edges of the people. Thus concludes chapter 6. So a couple of notes here. Don't pull back your neighbor's landmark. You can think of this as claim jumping or stake jumping, right, in the Old West. Basically, if this is where the dividing line is between two properties, don't move it so you can get more land. That's not allowed. Also, if you only have one witness for something, one witness shall not rise up against any person for any iniquity or any sin, right? So, in other words, it has to be two or more people, otherwise it just doesn't count. False witness, death penalty. Very straightforward. So if they can confirm by thoroughly comparing the truth between the different individuals, basically, yes, you shall do to him as he plotted to his brother. You shall abolish evil from among you. Right? So this guy who lied to try to get somebody killed, he's going to die instead. And everybody else, you're going to see what happened, and you're going to remember. No pity, eye for an eye, life for life, tooth for tooth, etc. Chapter 20 is about going to war, and honestly, this is, for me, one of the most interesting things I've read in the Torah, because we think about it in the Old World especially. It was very common for people to be drafted off into the armies of whatever king they may have, and they'd basically say, yeah, it's time to fight no matter what's going on in your personal life. The king or the people need you to fight. So here, we will first know that you're going to, no matter how numerous your enemy is, you have God fighting alongside you, so don't be afraid. Now, beyond that, the Kohanim will come and give a speech to rally everybody, saying, you're fighting with God by your side. You will not be defeated. Don't be afraid. Then the officers are going to go around and check with his men and basically ask, okay, checklist. Who here has a new house that has not yet inaugurated it? So I'm not sure exactly what it means to inaugurate his home, but I'm just going to assume he's built a new house, right? He just built a new house, and he hasn't even had the chance to live in it yet. He can go home because he deserves the right to at least enjoy his home a little bit before he possibly dies in war. Same thing with the vineyard, right? So who's basically planted, who's got a crop that's coming up, right? Who here has been working the land and is just finally still waiting to get the reward from all that work? Well, he better go home too, because if he dies in the war, it's not fair. He did all this work, so let him go home and enjoy the spoils of his farming, and then he'll come back. And then next up, who here is betrothed, right? So you have a wife that you're supposed to be with, and you haven't even had the chance to be with her yet? Well, you go home too. Go be with your wife, because better you do it than you die in the war and somebody else get your wife that you never got to enjoy and actually have a family with, right? So this is really considerate. This is a very, very considerate way of dealing with, mandatory conscription. And the last one here, who here is afraid? Because if you're afraid, we don't want you here either. We want people who are pure of heart and conviction, because we don't want your fear to infest your fellow man. We don't want you to cause everybody else to be scared too. So there you have it. This is just amazing. Honestly amazing. So once they've gone through this process, after they've gotten rid of all the people who are not going to go to war, the remainder are now going to be appointed to who's going to be made the officer of each individual legion. We're going to now break down who's commanding who. So there we have, interestingly, it's not a standing army per se, but rather before each battle, we assemble our legions, see who can fight and who can't, and then we're going to appoint who's who over those remaining people. Very cool. On to the seventh portion, chapter 20, verse 10. When you approach a city to wage war against it, you shall propose peace to it. And it will be, if it responds to you with peace, and it opens up to you, then it will be that all the people found therein shall become tributary to you, and they shall serve you. But if it does not make peace with you, and it wages war against you, you shall besiege it. And the Lord your God will deliver it into your hands, and you shall strike all its males with the edge of the sword. However, the women, the children, and the livestock, and all that is in the city, all its spoils you shall take for yourself, and you shall eat the spoils of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, which are not the cities of these nations. However, of these people's cities which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall not allow any soul to live. Rather, you shall utterly destroy them, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that they should not teach you to act according to all their abominations that they have done for their gods, whereby you would sin against the Lord your God. When you besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, to capture it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, for you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Is the tree of the field a man to go into the siege before you? However, a tree you know is not a food tree, you may destroy and cut down, and you shall build bulwarks against the city that makes war with you until its submission. Chapter 21, verse 1. If a slain person be found in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess, lying in the field, and it is not known who slew them, then your elders and judges shall go forth, and they shall measure to the cities around the corpse. And it will be that from the city closer to the corpse, the elders of that city shall take a calf with which work has never been done, and that has never drawn a yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring the calf down to a rugged valley, which was neither tilled nor sown, and there in the valley they shall decapitate the calf. And the Kohanim, the sons of Levi, shall approach, for the Lord your God has chosen them to serve him, and to bless in the name of the Lord, and by their mouth shall every controversy and every lesion be judged. And all the elders of that city who are then nearest to the corpse shall wash their hands over the calf that was decapitated in the valley. And they shall announce and say, Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see this crime. Atone for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, O Lord, and lay not the guilt of innocent blood among your people Israel. And so the blood shall be atoned for them. And you shall abolish the shedding of innocent blood from among you, for you shall do what is proper in the eyes of the Lord. All right, that's the end of the 7th portion. So once again, a quick recap. This is about how to conduct warfare. First up, comparisons. This is not unlike what we've heard about people like Alexander the Great or Cyrus of Persia. These are very, very humane, more or less, tactics when it comes to making war with a city. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up, you're going to make war with them, but first you're going to say, we offer you peace. Open your gates to us, we shall let you live, and you will pay us tribute, and you will serve us. So in other words, these kings or these cities or whatever, they will be turned into vassal states, and they will support Israel as a vassal. Now, if they say no and they go to war with you, then you lay siege to their city. This is also, interestingly, a very similar situation with the Mongols, though the Mongols would sometimes make an example of people, though I think we're about to see something similar with that in a moment. So anyway, it's time to go to bring out the siege engines. We're going to tear down this city, and we're going to kill every single man, woman, and child. Or at least we're going to kill every man, and take the women and children, as well as their livestock, and all that is theirs, all their treasure, all their loot. That will be the spoils of war. So you'll eat the spoils of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. And this is what you're going to do to the cities that are not among those I'm telling you to wipe out. We'll get to that in a second. So first, I do want to point out, it's interesting. Right? Earlier we had, okay, who among you has got this condition and that condition? Okay, go home. So I would look at it like this. Those who do stick around to do the fighting also get the benefit of taking the spoils of war, right? And the ones who go home would reasonably not get anything. Now, putting that aside, the people that are of the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, as well as the Jebusites, they are the ones where you're going to kill every man, woman, and child. There is no opportunity for peace. This is a total annihilation. There will not be one left. This is the command. Those particular peoples are to be destroyed. No discussion. All the other ones, we can go about this slavery or peace option. So there you have it. That is the condition for how they will determine whether or not they're going to destroy a people and take their people that are not massacred as hostage or bounty or booty or whatever you want to call them, to conquer or to simply possess is the difference, right? So if they conquer them, that means that they went to war, they kill them all of the men and take the women and children and everything else as prize. And if they simply possess them, they take them as a vassal state. Now, when they're going to war, it says when they're sieging a city, you cannot use a fruit tree. You can't cut down a fruit tree. All right, you can eat from it, but you can't cut it down. But if it's a tree that does not produce food, you can cut those down and use those as you need to do whatever you need to do to siege. So there we have the commands. This is what you need to remember. Now, on chapter 21, we get away from the warfare stuff. We talk about more civil matters again. This is a criminal case regarding the unknown murder victim. A person is killed, and you don't know who did it, right? It was just a completely successful murder where the guy who did it got away with it. So what's going to happen is they're going to measure, the judges and the elders are going to measure whose city is closest to where this guy was killed. So let's say you've got some farmer moving between two cities, and he comes across a corpse in the middle of the wilderness, and he's just like, wow, there's a dead body here. I don't know who did it. I don't see anybody. He reports it. They come and they measure it. Okay, it's closest to city A or B. Got it, city B. The people of City B are now responsible for atonement. So what's going to happen is they're going to have the elders and the Kohanim, they're going to take a new calf, like basically a newborn that has never done any work. It's pure, it's innocent, it's perfect. And they're going to take it to a rugged valley, which has also never been worked, and they're going to cut its head off. And then they're going to make a blessing of sorts, right? They're going to go ahead, bless in the name of the Lord, and say all of the different controversies and legion to be judged, right? So they're going to talk about their sins. And for the blood spilled of this calf and for the different rituals done here, the people will be forgiven for the murder victim who's unfortunately, their killer was not ever brought to justice. They are at least absolved of the sin related to it. And you shall abolish the shedding of innocent blood from among you, for you shall do what is proper in the eyes of the Lord. So there you go. Once again, we don't kill innocent people. Those just not allowed. And by doing this, you are now absolved of the guilt associated with the crime. With that said, that's the end of Parashat Shoftim. Thank you for listening. I found this one very interesting, especially having to do with the rules of warfare and things like that. To me, the one that really stuck out the most was just that people could just straight up go home. If they had the right conditions, you could opt out of being in the army for a time. And I think that's amazing. And really, I mean, think about it. Do you really want people who don't want to be there or who have reasons to go home? Like, they're going to compromise the mission. So it's better to send those people home and just take the guys who are committed and brave and ready to go. Until next time, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next time and we'll get even more Torah content. We're really coming close to the end here, so stay tuned as we draw near the end of this reading of the Torah. Wild stuff. What a long year it's been. Almost there. Until then, this is Shmuel Moshe saying, as always, Baruch Hashem.